Is your child obsessed with letters and numbers but doesn't talk much or at all? Are they diagnosed with autism, or do you have a toddler who is just showing signs of autism? Either way, you are probably worried and wondering how you can use your child's unique abilities, which is called hyperlexia, to get them talking more functionally. Let's get to this important topic. Today, we are discussing the topic of hyperlexia, which is when a child shows an unusually strong interest in letters, numbers, and in many cases, they can even read early, sometimes long before they're able to communicate with words and sentences. While it doesn't always mean autism if you have a child obsessed with letters and numbers and reading, if it's accompanied by a speech delay, lack of pointing, responding to their name poorly, or trouble comprehending language, and trouble comprehending what they're reading, then hyperlexia may be an early sign of autism. Today, we are tackling the top questions parents ask about children who are fixated on alphabet and numbers, and I'm going to share practical ways to use these strengths while still building the skills that matter most for everyday life.
How can I get my child with hyperlexia to request their wants and needs? Because we're mostly taught, a lot of people listening might have young toddlers or preschoolers, and they're saying all their letters or reading, but they aren't really requesting basic needs.
Yeah, so back in the fall, we launched a software, an assessment. I did a podcast episode on why we made the digital assessment and all kinds of things. We can link that in the show notes. But basically, you start with this digital assessment that takes you 10 minutes, and you need to find your child's or client's baseline in 10 minutes. Then you take that assessment, you turn it into a plan, and you start teaching. And teaching with a toddler or preschooler almost always involves the early learner materials like the shoebox and inset puzzles and those sorts of things. So if you have a child that knows all their letters and numbers, can read, it doesn't mean that you just, completely, like the mom did, cover up the clock in the kitchen and things like that. No, it's part of their lives and they like it. So even the inset puzzles, you have to be careful that they don't become too obsessive. So you want inset puzzles of animals and of vehicles and maybe letters, maybe numbers, inset puzzles of colors and shapes and those sorts of things. But you want to be rotating. So if you hold up an A and you have an inset puzzle and you don't say anything and they say A, you give it to them. That is part request or mand. It's part tact because they're labeling it. If you say it and they say it, it's part echo. It's following directions to put, they're sitting at the table, they're engaging. You don't want to be doing that straight for 15 minutes. Maybe you want to do, but like your point earlier, Kelsey, we know they can say it. They like to say it. It's part man because they want to put it in. We can use that just like we use video modeling. I did a recent episode on video modeling. We use video modeling at times to jumpstart language. We can use their interest in letters and numbers to also jumpstart language and to get them seated at the table and to, maybe on the iPad, we put apps where it's you pull in the B, E, D, and the bed spins. We don't want the child doing that on their own obsessively, but as part of table time, engaging with us, that may be appropriate. but we will also need to have pictures of real items, have 3D items of farm animals. And so we need to use this, but also teach all the names of reinforcers, of important people. Oh, and really important when you are gathering the early learner materials to get flashcards without letters or words on them, or to get cheap flashcards where you literally cut them off. So either you get like a language builder set without letters and words on the front, or you get cheap ones and you cut off the letters and the words. And you can keep those letters and words, don't trash them. You keep them for other things like matching the real bed with the picture bed or the picture of the word. But don't do that when they're 2 or 3 until you can get their language going. Really focus on the nouns that they need, then the actions that they need, and to build words. And I mean, I know I'm saying this a lot and, just trying to explain what we do. The procedures to get table time started are outlined in my book, Turn Autism Around. But they're step-by-step in our online courses and community where you really can learn, because it's tricky, especially when you have a child who is obsessed or, interested in letters and reading. In order to find that balance, because it is a balance, it's a dance, and we don't want to stamp out their special skill or their interests, but we also need to get them to respond, not just talking wise, but also receptively, to follow directions, to understand. We really need to build that comprehension. In my online courses, I have a book program that I developed to boost up comprehension. And basically you want to get really simple books, like one line per book, read it to the child or with the child. If the child can read, they can read it. But then before we move on to the next page, we need to get the child to answer questions. And this is obviously a child who can speak, they don't have to read. You could read to them, but it's not like, it's very simple books and very simple questions. And we want them to get 80% of the answers to our questions. So if the questions aren't basic enough, like what's this called? And they say cow, or, if that's in their repertoire. So that's important to build comprehension.
So that brings us to our last question. Is it okay to use words, letters, and numbers in teaching, or what should the focus be? And I mean, I think we've answered that over and over today, but any last thoughts on that?
And I think the younger kids, you have to think about, if you have a young child, like 2 or 3, think about the things that they're going to learn in 3-year-old preschool. They might have yellow as the week of, is this week's color, and go find yellow items in your house. And, instead of, you can pair the word yellow, but they probably aren't going to pair the words, banana. Like, try to tone it down. You don't want to teach them to read like a first grader when they're 2 or 3, because it's going to stand out as not necessarily a positive thing, especially if they don't have good sitting behavior, they don't have good language comprehension. If I had a 2 or 3-year-old, I'd be working on a lot of tolerating books being read, asking questions about the book, taking turns answering the questions, imitation, manding, those kind of early skills, because we can use this, we can use their interest, like we've talked about the whole show, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. And as the child ages, just watch for those forks in the road where you're like, we're really, memorizing too much of one thing at the expense of everything else. I mean, there's lots of adult autistic individuals who are really savants. I don't know that we've used that word, but for those of you who've watched the movie Rain Man with Dustin Hoffman, and if you haven't, you should probably watch that. But there was, he was portraying an adult with autism who lived in a institution and was had savant skills, had special skills, and a lot of ability to do numbers at gambling resorts and knew people's birthdays and knew the days they were born based on the date and year. So for every step, I would just say, what are grade 3 kids doing? What are third graders, 3-year-olds doing in preschool? What are 2-year-olds doing? And treat the delays. You use these strengths as really reinforcers, ability to assess their articulation and all kinds of things. But then we need to really teach their everything they need to know to get those weaknesses up, to get them functioning as highly as possible. And our goal for everybody is as safe as possible, as independent as possible, and as happy as possible. So use letters, use words, use whatever to get those 3 areas shaped up. I hope this information was helpful. If it was, please leave a comment or a 5-star review wherever you are listening or watching, and this enables us to help others. If your child is showing an intense interest in letters and numbers, but isn't talking much or at all, and maybe also having issues with problem behaviors and self-care deficits, I encourage you to act now to attend a free 28-minute brand new workshop I created. You can get all the details and watch right away at marybarbera.com/workshop. There's a lot you can do, and it's important to act now. I'll see you at the workshop.